Some children possess mysterious power. These abilities can range from precognition to hearing voices in their heads. My beloved daughter is no exception. One time, as my husband was leaving for a business trip, she tearfully cried out, "Daddy, don't go! It seems like the place you're staying with the women today will catch fire." He laughed it off, wondering if she had seen it in a dream. He would later regret not believing her for the rest of his life. My name is Kathy, and I am 31 years old. I used to work as a chef in a restaurant where I met my husband Jason, who was 5 years older than me and worked as a salesperson for a food manufacturing company. And we got to know each other during meetings. We hit it off. And eventually he proposed, and we got married. I continued working for a while after getting married, but I quit my job when I gave birth. Our lovely daughter Sandra is now 5 years old. Raising her has been challenging, but she is so adorable, and every day is incredibly fulfilling. Jason, who works in sales, often comes home late, and by the time he arrives, our daughter is already asleep. In the beginning, he used to peek into her room to catch a glimpse of her sleeping face, and I would gently scold him, saying, "Don't wake her up." However, lately, he hasn't even been doing that. The most challenging period of raising kids is up until the age of 3. Although he was busy, Jason didn't help with child care even on his days off, and he would just laze around in bed. "Hey, I understand you're tired, but at least take care of her on your day off." I complained, but he brushed me off, saying, "What? I have to work even on my days off? When am I supposed to rest then?" I never got any break throughout the year, but it seemed like he adored Sandra. Although he never changed her diapers or fed her milk, he would only play with her when it suited him and buy her toys to win her affection. Despite spending more time with me, she would say, "I want to hold hands with Daddy." It sometimes annoyed me how she favored him, although he wasn't cooperative in raising her. He would occasionally take us shopping or out for dinner when he felt like it. I partly gave up, thinking, well, maybe this is what every married couple is like. And as for our daughter Sandra, from around the age of 3, she seemed to have some mysterious power or a slightly peculiar aspect. I'm currently pregnant with our second child, but before I knew I was pregnant, during the time when we went to the restroom together while we were out, she asked, "Mommy, is the baby in your belly a boy or a girl?" "A baby in my belly?" Although we were trying to conceive, we hadn't been successful. I hadn't taken it too seriously. But when she mentioned it, I suddenly realized that my period was late. So I bought a pregnancy test just in case, and it indeed showed that I was pregnant. I became certain of her mysterious power on the day we planned to go to the shopping mall. Usually, she would be excited to go out, but that day she vehemently opposed, crying and yelling, "I don't want to go. No." Since she cried so much, we decided not to go. And it was a good thing we didn't. That night on the news, we learned that there had been an assault at the mall during the time we planned to go. I excitedly told my husband, "It's a good thing we didn't go. We could have gotten caught up in the accident." But he dismissed it, saying, "No way. It was just a coincidence." When we visited my in-laws during a holiday, she tearfully told her grandmother, "I see something cloudy in your chest. You should go to the hospital soon." Since she had predicted the incident before, I believed her. I explained the situation to my mother-in-law Ellen and suggested she have a checkup. But her response left me speechless. creepy. What kind of child is she? It's because of your poor parenting that she turned out like this. It's not me who should go to the hospital. It's her. Don't let her say weird things outside. It's embarrassing. People will think she's creepy. I was at a loss for words at her harsh comment. Until then, I neither liked nor disliked her, but maintained a moderate distance since she was my husband's mother. But from that moment on, I started to dislike her. Later, we found out that she indeed had breast cancer. Fortunately, it was in the early stage and could be removed through surgery. But she said things like, "You don't really think Sandra predicted it, do you? It was just a lucky guess." But I knew the truth. Normally, she would avoid health checkups. But this time, she went for a breast cancer screening, right after my daughter told her about it. She must have believed my daughter's worst. If the discovery had been delayed, it might have been too late. Although I didn't want to see Ellen during this summer break, I decided to go because my sister-in-law Lisa, who is my age, was coming home, and I was looking forward to seeing her. "Hi, Kathy. Long time no see. How are you? And how's Sandra? How's your morning sickness?" "Well, so far, it's not too bad. It was terrible when I was pregnant with Sandra." "Lisa, it's been a while. Your belly has become quite big, hasn't it?" Lisa was also married and expecting her first child. Watching our conversation with a disinterested expression was my other sister-in-law, Kelly. Kelly was like a carbon copy of Ellen. She was the oldest of the 3 siblings and still single at 38. According to Lisa, Kelly couldn't get married because she was mean-spirited, which I completely agree with. When my husband and I went to greet her for our wedding, she said to me, a stranger at the time, "Jason, are you really going to marry this girl? She looks plain, and her clothes are so unfashionable. There must be a more suitable girl for you out there." Until Ellen verbally abused my daughter, I hadn't thought of her as that malicious. But looking back, my father-in-law was always around, and so was my husband, so she must have been putting on a facade. My father-in-law, David, is a quiet person, but he is very kind. Lisa must have taken after him. She is always gentle, smiling, and bright. And since we were the same age, we got along well. I think of her as a real sister and cherish her. At my in-laws' house, they have a big dog named Sam, and my daughter is always eager to see him. She usually goes to play with Sam first, but this time she started making a fuss. "Mom, Sam is in trouble. He says his stomach hurts." "What?" I hurried to check on Sam, but he wasn't crying or showing any signs of pain. "This is ridiculous. She's going to grow up useless if she keeps lying like this," Ellen said, while Kelly joined her in mocking her. "Right? Kathy seems dumb, so Sandra must have taken after her." As for Jason, he said, "Well, Sandra must have just had a dream or something." At that moment, my father-in-law said, "No, I believe what Sandra is saying. Let's take Sam to the vet." He took Sam to the vet, even though his wife disapproved. What a waste of time! When he returned from the checkup, he excitedly said, "Sandra, thank you. Sam had a stomach illness. It would have been too late if we had waited any longer." He hugged my daughter, and she looked happy. "Yes, it seems that Sandra had some kind of precognitive ability," Lisa said. And we all enjoyed the conversation. But Ellen and Kelly remained unimpressed. It was around the beginning of autumn that I started to notice my husband acting strangely. He had always come home late, but his weekend work had increased. "Have you been busy lately? You've been working on weekends a lot more."
Yeah. I've been assigned as the leader of a new project."
At that time, I believed him and didn't doubt his busyness, as I was aware of his demanding job as a chef. But I began to notice things, like him having flashy things, always paying attention to his phone, and going into bedroom with his phone whenever it rang, which made me increasingly suspicious. Still, I was pregnant and wanted to deny the possibility of infidelity. Meanwhile, I was busy with my daughter, prenatal checkups, and maternity yoga, and I had completely forgotten about my suspicions about Jason. Lisa gave birth during this time, so we went to celebrate and got to hold my new nephew. Sandra seemed fascinated by the baby she was seeing for the first time. "The baby in your belly is a girl."
"Wow, a girl, huh?"
"I'm so happy." "You will have a little sister, Sandra." Although I didn't know the gender yet, I was confident it was a girl since she said so. Lisa also said, "I wish I had asked Sandra to predict the gender too. They had told me it was a girl, but it turned out to be a boy." We laughed together. A few months before my due date, the home phone rang, and when I answered, the caller introduced herself as Anne, my husband's junior from work. She said that she was carrying my husband's child. I had almost forgotten about it, but as I recalled his suspicious actions, I felt both a sense of "I knew it" and anger at being deceived while pregnant. Jason probably thought that since I wasn't working and was pregnant, I couldn't divorce him and took the situation lightly. For some reason, I had a strong feeling that her pregnancy was a lie. "Well, congratulations," I said excitedly, which she probably hadn't expected. Not knowing how to respond, she seemed confused as I asked, "So, in other words, you want us to divorce, right?"
Yes."
That's inconvenient because I'm pregnant too. Can you at least wait until I give birth? You can wait that long, right?" "Of course. I should be the priority since I'm his wife." Perhaps finding me creepy, she quickly hung up the phone. Although I had a faint suspicion of his infidelity, I never thought the person involved would call me directly. But I saved myself the trouble and expense of hiring a private investigator to look into his affair. So I started to find the situation amusing and even funny. But what should I do now? Can I really manage on my own? After divorcing my husband when our second child is about to be born, while divorce seems inevitable, I decided to seriously consider what to do next without telling Jason about the call. Life went on as if nothing had happened, until one day my husband announced he was going on a business trip. But given his excitement and cheerful demeanor, I was convinced he was going on a romantic trip with a woman named Anne. "Oh, you're working so hard. What's the business trip to? I need to know where you are, just in case something happens. And I need to get a hold of you." When I said that, his face tensed for a moment. But he composed himself, took out his smartphone from his bag, and wrote down the hotel's address. He probably wrote down the contact information from a previous actual business trip. On the day of his departure, as I handed him his bag, I said, "Take care and have a safe trip."
"Sorry to leave you while you're pregnant. Please take care of Sandra. If anything happens, you can call my parents' house."
He spoke kind words to me, trying to sound convincing. At that moment, Sandra cried out to her father, who was leaving for his trip. "Daddy, don't go. It seems like the place you were staying with the woman is gonna catch fire today."
What are you talking about?
My husband asked, his face clearly flustered.
Sandra, did you have another dream?
He said, laughing it off as he patted her head. By not believing her this time, he would regret it for the rest of his life. I panicked, thinking that what she said might come true. I tried to desperately convince him not to go, but he wouldn't listen. That day, I couldn't relax and paced around the house. When I talked to David, he and Lisa came to our home. "I'm sorry, David. And you too, Lisa. Is my nephew okay? I know you were here to take it easy. Sorry for making you bring him along while you were going through so much." "No, it's fine. I'll put him to sleep here. I don't want to stay at the house with my mom and sister anymore." Kelly is sarcastic, and my mom is nagging. "Oh, speaking of my brother," I explained everything to them, and David said,
"There's no doubt that what Sandra says is true. She saved Sam that time. My idiot son is really pathetic. I want to stop him, but would he answer the phone if I called?"
He tried calling, but as expected, Jason didn't pick up. A few hours later, the worst happened. I received a call from an unknown number, and when I answered, it was from a hospital. It wasn't a hospital near his supposed business trip location, but one in another city. They told me that Jason had been caught in a fire while he was with the woman. The apartment was probably where Annie lived. I asked Lisa to watch Sandra and went to the hospital with David. There, my husband lay in bed, his body injured and suffering from burns. Although the surgery went well, he had sustained spinal cord damage when he jumped out of the window to escape the fire, and there was a possibility he would need care due to lingering effects. I decided to tell him about the divorce once he woke up. A few hours later, when he opened his eyes, he noticed his father and me.
"Oh, Kathy and Dad, thanks for coming. There was a fire accident on my business trip. I'll need to be hospitalized for a while. Sandra's words really do come true. I'm surprised. I'll be causing trouble for a while, so please bear with me."
I was dumbfounded by his feeble words. "You know, I already know. You were at your mistress's house and got caught in a fire, right? What do you mean, bear with you?" I confronted him calmly. He looked frustrated for a moment, but then brazenly said,
"Well, let's just forget about that. It was just a momentarily lapsed. Rather, I'll need your help from now on. You're my wife, so it's only natural that you help me, right?"
That's when David, who had been listening silently, spoke up.
"Don't be ridiculous, son. Do you understand what you've done? Kathy is raising Sandra while being pregnant. How dare you have an affair when things are so tough for her? I don't care about you anymore. If you want someone to take care of you, ask your mistress." "What? Is that what a father would tell his son? Kathy, this was just a fling." "A fling? You don't think I'm serious, do you? She won't take care of me. Let's just be happy, just the two of us, like we used to. We have another child on the way."
Fed up with my husband's selfish words, I said, "That's it. We're done. Let's get a divorce." I placed the document on the table.
"Are you kidding me? Divorce? I'm in this condition. Don't whine about a one-time affair. Who do you think has been supporting you all this time?
Just as I was about to yell at him, the curtain next to us suddenly opened, and I was startled. A young woman appeared.
I've been listening quietly, and you just keep saying selfish things. You just ran away from the fire without me. You said I was a better woman, and that you would divorce your wife and marry me. And now you say it was just a fling?
Listening to the conversation, I knew this woman must be the mistress.
Anne, you're right. Of course, it's like that. It's just lip service for a married man.
He called her Anne. No doubt the woman who had called. I had no sympathy for her, but I thought what he did to her was terrible too. She seemed to have been rescued with lighter injuries than Jason, but she looked like she could burst into tears at any moment. If her pregnancy was real, I wondered if her unborn baby was okay. Anne, how's your baby? Is everything okay? Jason looked at me, wondering why I would ask that.
Don't worry, the pregnancy was a lie. He just couldn't make up his mind. I just wanted to push him to get a divorce from you.
You lying about being pregnant? You're terrible.
He yelled, but he had no right to say that.
You are the one who's terrible. You said I was just a fling, right? Then there is no problem. Goodbye.
As she tried to close the curtain while crying, I stopped her. Wait, Anne. I'm sorry about your injuries, but I'll be claiming compensation for emotional distress. It's only natural since you got involved with a married man. Hearing my words, she silently closed the curtain. I'll also be claiming compensation from you, Jason. I'm about to give birth, so you'd better cover the childbirth expenses as well. My husband, probably thinking he wouldn't be charged, made a dumbfounded face.
No way. You can't do that. I won't be able to work for a while,
he said, looking at me with the pleading eyes. But I felt no sympathy for him and shook my head. Then,
can you lend me some money? No way. It's your own fault. Take responsibility and pay for it. Please, Kathy. I admit I was wrong. I'll be a better man for you. So don't abandon me.
No matter how much he called out, we ignored him and left the hospital room, returning home. After I thanked David and Lisa, they went back to their own home. Later, I received a call from my mother-in-law, who had heard about the fire and visited her son in the hospital.
How could you be so heartless? He's in such a terrible state. Forgive him for just one affair and help him out. You'll be in trouble without a husband when the baby is born. Sandra is such an amazing child. Let's make use of her abilities from now on.
I could hear Kelly's voice chiming in from the background.
That's right.
It made me think how selfish they both were. It's amazing that you can say such things, especially after calling Sandra creepy. Maybe you should go to the hospital yourself, Ellen. I can't be a family with people who tell their grandchild to go to the hospital and have such crazy mind that they cheat. Sandra and the new baby will be better off without a father like him. If you want to help, why don't you help him yourself? I said at all once. She was yelling and screaming, but I ignored her and blocked her calls. Later, I was able to get a divorce from Jason through a lawyer. Since there was a lot of decisive evidence, I was able to claim a large amount of compensation from both Jason and his mistress Anne. Jason, having lost Anne's affection and being denied help from his father, had no choice but to rely on his sister and his stay-at-home mother. However, Ellen and Kelly were kicked out of the family home. Ellen, despite being a stay-at-home mom, spent money recklessly and hurled verbal abuse at Sandra and Lisa. My father-in-law couldn't stand her defending Jason and told her he wanted a divorce. Self-proclaimed career woman Kelly was actually incompetent at work, but her boasting was top-notch. She had a bad reputation at her company and apparently didn't make much money. She didn't contribute to living expenses, didn't do housework, and just lazed around, constantly making snide remarks to Lisa, so she was kicked out too. Jason, who had cheated on me with a subordinate under the guise of a business trip, was demoted at his company and didn't have anyone to visit him in the hospital. He had a large debt to pay for hospital fees, child support, and compensation. With his now disabled body requiring care, he would likely struggle in the future with his moneyless mother and sister. At least he had someone to stay with, I guess. Moreover, I heard that he had lost his function as a man due to after effects. But I couldn't find it in myself to feel any sympathy for him. I gave birth to a baby girl. My father-in-law David apologized profusely, but he was not to blame for anything. Although David and Lisa are no longer considered family by marriage, we still keep in touch and get together regularly for meals and such, so that our children could have play dates. My mother, who had been away in the custody side taking care of my grandfather, returned home saying, "Your brother and his wife are there now, so your father will be fine." She has been helping me with my daughters. My parents are absolutely smitten with their grandchildren, whom they haven't seen much. I have some savings for a while, and Jason's compensation payments will help me get by. After my baby is about 6 months old, I've arranged to start working at the restaurant again. As my older daughter Sandra grew up, her mysterious abilities gradually seemed to fade away. While I sometimes feel a little sad about that, I want to continue watching over the growth of my 2 daughters.